Welcome aboard. You're listening to FlightPlan Quick Consults, your go-to podcast for veterinary insights that are fast, focused, and designed to elevate your practice. I'm your host, Brenda Tassava Medina from Encore Veterinary Consulting. Whether you're between appointments or heading into a strategy session, we've got takeoff-ready tips, tools, and takeaways to keep your team soaring. So buckle up and let's chart today's course to better culture and systems. Today's panel includes Carol Hurst, Josh Vaisman, and Brandon Hess. Carol, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Hi there. I am Carol Hurst, and I've spent about 20 years in the veterinary profession. I made my start as a credentialed technician and worked my way through most areas of the practice. And I love the medicine, but what really drives me is the people. Building strong teams, shaping healthy cultures, creating client experiences that make a real impact instead of feeling transactional. These days, I work as a consultant and speaker and educator. I support veterinary teams around leadership and communication and wellness and practice operations. I'm especially passionate about helping practices grow without burning out the people who make them work. Outside of the practice, I'm a mom, a boxer dog person, a not so secret plant collector, and I've gotten a lot into drawing, and that's me.
Awesome. I know that Monstera is one of your
Oh
favorites.
my gosh.
Mine too. Next up is Josh Mexico Joe Vaisman. You've got to tell us more about your nickname, Josh.
Sure. So thanks for having me here, Brenda. Appreciate it. It's good to be here. It's always an honor to spend time with you and Carol and Brandon as well. I'm the founder of Flourish Veterinary Consulting, which I started in late 2017, about 4 years ago. So this would be what mid 21 or so. We started looking for another positive change agent. We wanted to increase the size of our team, and so we were looking for another consultant. And we put an ad out, to the community. And one person decided that she was interested in applying. But before submitting her application, she had some questions. Her and I happen to be connected on social media. So she sent me a private message with some questions about the job, the role, all those kinds of things. At the time, my wife and I were on vacation in Mexico. And I wanted to really be respectful of the fact that I was away, but also this person, I wanted to encourage her to apply. So I just simply wrote back to her. I said, listen, I am on vacation with my wife this week in Mexico, so I'm not going to answer your questions right now, but I really encourage you to apply, and I will gladly reach out to you when I get home. She ended up writing back and said, don't worry about it. I'll just submit my application. And she did. So I get home from my trip, and of course, now we've got to go through all the applicants, and then we start reaching out to people, and a certain amount of time passes. We ended up hiring this individual. Her name is Andy Davison, and she is amazing, one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. But we came to learn about a year after we hired her that after she had sent that message, and I had responded that I was on vacation in Mexico, her husband, who is also a veterinarian, by the way, obviously caught wind of this and was really curious, like, what's going on? You submitted your application. Have you heard anything? For some reason, he could not remember my name. And so he kept saying every day, have you heard from Mexico Joe yet? So Andy told us this story about a year after she started working with us. And all of us thought it was hilarious, and it stuck. And so I changed my signature to Josh Mexico Joe Vaisman.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here today, Josh. And last but certainly not least is Brandon Hess.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Brenda. So my name is Brandon Hess. I'm a certified veterinary practice manager, certified compassion fatigue professional, and an HR professional. My formal education is in psychology. So I have a bachelor's in psychology, which I always kind of joke and say, which means really nothing because you can't do anything with a bachelor's in psychology. I had plans to be an adolescent psychologist at one point, and then just fell in love with veterinary medicine back in 2008. Started as an entry-level assistant at an ER practice. Actually met my wife at that ER practice. I think the audience could appreciate this. We met for the very first time carrying a dead dog to the freezer together. Not a story I tell to the general public, but veterinary professionals
Just
can
did.
certainly appreciate that. I've worked in a variety of different practices, managed small mixed animal practices to a large ER specialty practice. We got the 2016 AHA Specialty Practice of the Year. And then I've been consulting and speaking pretty much full time since 2016. Very fortunate to be able to be the managing owner and partner at three veterinary practices in Northern Kentucky. From one doctor to seven doctor practices, very, very heavy on the floor with management and cultural navigation and all those types of things. So just excited to be here.
Glad to have you, Brandon, as always. All right, let's dig right into our first question. And we're focused on culture and systems today. So, how do you spot burnout before it breaks your team? And Brandon, I'm going to start with you because this is one of the areas that you have really focused on throughout your entire career as a consultant. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, so I was, thinking through this. One thing that's been really obvious to me this year is how far vulnerability and transparency goes with my team, and kind of normalizing this idea of burnout and compassion fatigue. And the more that I normalize it and share some of my own personal struggles within reason of my team, it makes it more likely that they're going to approach me about it because it's not, I'm destigmatizing it a little bit. I think being present on the floor with the team and making them comfortable with approaching you and getting to know them and being able to identify potential issues as they come up. So, addressing or calling out a concerning behavior. Like, hey, Sally, I noticed you're usually very, very punctual, but recently, I've noticed some tardiness and you've been, seem a little bit off. Is everything okay? And sometimes, depending on comfort level, they may or may not share things with you, but I think continuing that dialogue, calling out concerning behavior, someone who's normally very social and then they become very introverted, and not really very talkative and kind of isolating themselves. There's definitely different levels of burnout, that people can go through. But I think the more that we talk about it in general, the more likely it is that people are going to be able to identify accurately in themselves and then also, reach out for support if needed.
Awesome. Carol, I'm going to go to you because you currently teach the Compassion Satisfaction Accredited Workplace, which Brandon actually created many years ago for vet support. So we've gone through a couple of iterations of that. But from that perspective of like working with practice leaders on compassion, fatigue, and burnout in their practices, how do you spot burnout before it breaks their teams?
So, um, I think Brandon hit so many good points, and I like trying to talk practice managers through having that pulse on the team as a whole, because I think we can get so granular in the day to day in our to do list that it can be really hard for us to take a step back and look at the whole team and say, okay, it looks like they're kind of snipping at each other a little more. And, I know that this team works really well together in these situations, but I'm noticing that, maybe there's a little more backbiting than normal, or maybe there's a little less connection. They're not wanting to kind of take a break and chill out together as much as I notice. And so I like to coach them around having that emotional awareness of the team as a whole, because I think that can be really important when you see those little behavioral changes that start to happen. And you can then say, okay, as a leader, I can see my team is suffering. What can I then do? Like, what concrete things can I do? And it might be just checking in more individually with them. It might be, maybe we need to look at how can I boost my engagement so that they feel that connection and it gives them an outlet. So
Thank you. Thank you. And Josh, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah,
Spotting
I love
burnout
this.
before it breaks the team.
Yeah, I love this question, and I really love the insights that Brandon and Carol shared. There were a couple of things that stood out to me that I heard from both Brandon and Carol. I'm putting them in my own language, but these were the thoughts that popped into my head as I was listening to them. One thing that I think is really important when it comes to burnout prevention is the difference between a passive and an active approach. Both Brandon and Carol suggested that we take an active approach as leaders. Like, those of us who have power and influence in the organization are actively looking at and considering and acting on whatever the potential burnout drivers might be within our organization. Both Brandon and Carol talked about observing the team regularly, having routine conversations, asking them questions, trying to get an idea of their lived experience at work. That is an active thing. I think too often we take a more passive approach. We send out a single survey across the organization once a year, and then call that our pulse point of the whole team's lived experience across 365 days, which is just absolutely absurd to me. The other part that really stood out to me from what they both said was what I heard as relational elements. These kinds of subjective psychological phenomena are interpersonally interdependent relational phenomena. These are things that show up in workplaces where we interact with each other. And so to measure it, to assess it, to be aware of it, and to do something about it requires being up close with people. We can't do it from afar. We can't expect, whether you're a small hospital and it's you as a single doctor and a team of 10, or you're the CEO of a large organization overseeing 1,000 hospitals. We can't expect that person at the top who is also doing a lot of work to be fully aware of everything that's going on at the ground level at every point in time. There has to be an up close element to it. So there's got to be somebody who has power and influence up close measuring it. So one of the ways that I've sort of come to approach this, first of all, I want to be very clear. I'm not necessarily a big fan of burnout prevention as much as like thriving promotion, because I worry sometimes that the term burnout can be misconstrued and unintentionally turn into we should never experience stress or strain, and that's unfair. This work is inherently stressful and strainful. It's going to be difficult. We are going to have really hard days. That's the reality of our work, right? So given that, how do we ensure that the grand trajectory of our experience in this workplace leads us to thrive despite the inevitable challenges and stressors that we'll face? So that's the first part for me, which is clarifying what is it that we are trying to promote here, right? And being clear about that with the team. And then the second thing is finding a way to measure that. Brandon and Carol gave great examples of how we can do that. Just actually measure it. Keep your finger on the pulse. Are we moving towards thriving, or are we moving away from it? And then regardless of what direction you're moving, the third element is acting on that. If we are moving towards thriving, if we feel like this has been a particularly shitty week and it's been really hard on people, but they are kicking butt, let's share that with them. Like let's show them that we've seen that, we noticed that, and you know what, guys, we're gonna lighten the load next week for you, right? Or if we're moving away from thriving, the team sees that leadership is noticing that and doing something about it. So that clarify, measure, and act, I think, is a really nice little model for how to approach this kind of thing.
I love it. Do any of the three of you have any particular tools or resources that you use with teams when it comes to thriving in a culture, lessening workplace stress, that type of thing?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked this because actually, as Josh was talking, I was like, I had kind of an aha moment because he's so good at taking, um, you know, uh, negative terms and turning them into positive, right? He said burnout prevention versus I think it's something around thriving professionally, and it reminded me of a book that actually one of my employees suggested that I read called Off Balance, and it talks about personal and professional satisfaction versus the myth of work-life balance. And as we're talking about this, I think it's also important for any listeners to understand that whether it's burnout or work-life balance or compassion fatigue, there is a personal component to it, things that happen outside of work that can certainly influence how people act within the workplace. So, I love the book Off Balance because it also has an assessment tool that can actually measure your personal and your professional satisfaction. And I haven't used it with my support staff yet, but I've used it with my management team. And I think it's a little bit of an aha moment of I may be less satisfied on the personal side of things, and that's making me feel burnout or compassion fatigue or susceptible to compassion fatigue at work. So I think those type of measurement tools, as Josh was talking about earlier, are great for awareness. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in. Thanks for jogging my memory there, Josh.
You bet. If I could add a couple things to that, Brenda. I love that. By the way, I'm not familiar with that book, but I love the idea of talking about it in terms of like professional fulfillment and professional satisfaction. Because that changes the narrative, right, Brandon? Like if we're talking about burnout prevention, now our brains are primed to look for indicators of burnout or drivers of burnout. But if we have conversations internally about professional fulfillment, then that primes us to say that, okay, some days are going to be great, some days are going to be hard, some days are going to be somewhere in between. But overall, am I finding this work fulfilling? Right? Like that's a very different conversation that accomplishes the same thing. I think that's really lovely. In its simplest form, one of the ways that we've encouraged people to, or veterinary practices to kind of measure this is it works well if it's an individual practice and it's not a super large organization. But we have them like basically purchase like glass jars and red, yellow, and green marbles. And then at the end of every day, when people check out, they have to pick the color marble that represents how their day went for them. If it was a particularly good day, it's a green marble in the jar. If it was just a regular old day, it's a yellow marble. If it was a really tough day for whatever reason, it's a red marble. And then whoever is, your top line leader that's coming in the next day, their first task is to look at the jar. And you visually, immediately, you can see how the day was yesterday for the team, right? And what I typically coach people on with that is like when you're doing something like that, if you see a lot of greens, don't just be like thumbs up and go to your office and do your work. Like that is something to celebrate. That's something to go ask your team, get real curious. Like what happened? I'm looking at the schedule and you guys had like 7 surgical procedures and there were 3 emergency drop-offs and it was a green day. Tell me about that. What happened yesterday? Who helped it be a green day? Like dig into that, find out what are the strengths in the organization that you can celebrate and build upon. And then of course, if there's a lot of red marbles in there, that's probably not the day for you to go bury yourself in your spreadsheets. That's the day to be checking in on your team and seeing how they're doing, right? So again, this is the up close stuff that Carol and Brandon were talking about. Finding ways to measure it and act on it with consistency and routine is in and of itself a burnout prevention intervention.
I have a quick one that is really granular. And I think about, how can we educate our teams to kind of exercise emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Because a lot of us, myself included, we get into this field and we don't know these things. But I've got a fun one, and it's an app called Finch. And I talk about it with the Seesaw program. And I talk about it in the context of here's something to introduce to your team that can help them be a little more self-aware. And it is all about taking care of this little bird. And you take care of this little bird by completing self-care goals that you set. So for example, if I wanted to make sure that I am taking a break because I'm sitting down a lot, you can have one of your goals be take a break 4 times a day, get up, walk around, stretch a little bit. And as you complete that, it takes care of your little bird. So it's kind of a fun thing to help your team gain a little bit of self-awareness. And I like the little tools, especially when we can incorporate technology into making things fun and boosting awareness.
Yeah. I love it because we naturally want to take care of the little pets and companion and others, and this kind of like incorporates self-care in that whole approach.
Right. I'm not going to drink more water for me, but man, I need to take care of Glimmer, my finch, and so I'll drink water.
Glimmer, what a great name for a finch.
That
awesome.
is my finch's name, Glimmer.
I love it. Love it.
All right, we're going to shift over to systems in the practice. And so here I'm going to start with Carol. What's one 20-minute system that could save your practice hours each week?
And this is still in the context of our burnout prevention.
Yeah, it could be in that context, or it could be something that, you just know that, helping the team with workflow is going to take a little bit of stress off of their team. So it could be any type of system that you want to implement.
So, I'm still thinking about this intentionality and engagement with your team so that you can be more aware of what's going on early. And I've been reading a lot of books like The Power of Mattering, and one of the things that really stands out to me as someone who doesn't have a good memory and needs to take good notes is having like a little cheat sheet for your team so that you can help yourself remember those little details and make sure that your interactions can be more intentional. I think it feels a little bit like, I'm kind of cheating by saying, oh, so and so's daughter had a soccer game, and I want to make sure to remember that so that I can ask about that. And it feels a little bit like cheating, but when I think about it, I'm like, no, I genuinely want to remember that, and I just can't remember that. And so if I have a system to take a few notes so that you can have those interactions with your team, I think, man, if I were in practice now and interacting with my team and knowing those things about them, that was the hardest thing for me, was making sure that I was intentional about that. So I think finding a system that's going to work, whether it's a little desktop note or just you jotting a few things down after you interact with your team, I think that can really help.
Builds relationships. I love it. How about you, Josh? Any systems you want to recommend?
Yeah, I love what Carol's saying, by the way. I've started to use scheduled text messages for that purpose. Like if I'm having a conversation with someone and they tell me about something coming up or something important to them, I'll go and schedule a text message for like the day before for that day. Because I'm the same with you. I will absolutely forget that stuff. I think anything that we do that improves the quality of the interpersonal relationships at work is going to be helpful, not just with burnout, not just with professional fulfillment or thriving, but with everything, with operational improvement, with efficiency, with productivity. All that stuff helps. Anything we do to strengthen relationships, and I think one of the best ways to do that is structured, purposeful, consistent, routine one-on-ones. Like where somebody who has more power than me in the organization is meeting with me regularly, routinely, because they are interested in my professional well-being and my professional success. And whatever that looks like, that can vary. That could be, a 20-minute biweekly meeting between manager and direct report. So we've got our medical directors meeting with all of our associate veterinarians, once every 2 weeks or once a month for this purpose. And it's structured, and there's like 2 or 3 specific questions and things that we do. And we can use those times, by the way, to repeat what Carol is suggesting. It doesn't just have to be work-related stuff, right? It can be, hey, I know that last week, your kid was playing in the baseball tournament. How did it go? Right? Like, it's a great opportunity to have scheduled time for that. That could also be the practice manager leading a 20-minute departmental meeting once a week, in which the sole purpose is not to provide policies or updates, but it's just to ask them about their work experience, what's going well, and what could go better, what barriers can I remove for you, right? Like just things like that. So something that it's consistent, it's structured, it's about the interpersonal relationship, it's about the other individuals, and it's expected in routine. So it's not something that we start doing now, and then when things get busy, we just kick that can down the road. That's actually more harmful than having not done it at all. But those things have been shown over and over and over again in the literature to be really, really powerful interventions.
Excellent. Brandon, one 20-minute system that could save your practice hours each week.
Yeah, so it's somewhat similar to has components of what Josh was suggesting, but one thing that I implemented this year, and at my 7 doctor practice, we have approximately 40 staff members. So this still is applicable for smaller staff practices, but I think the manager doing rounds every morning. So Josh was talking about having departmental meetings. One thing that I try to make a point of every morning that I come in, or whichever manager is on duty, we kind of coined it MOD, manager on duty. But walking around first thing, checking in with each of the departments, having conversations. Hey, how did Fluffy do with surgery yesterday? I think it really helps me stay connected with my team. But if there's any issues kind of brewing, they'll come up in conversation before they turn into 2 or 3 hours worth of meetings that I have to have. So try to get ahead of those. Um, Also, as manager on duty, checking things that day to day can create stress for the team. So, for instance, my CSRs having clients calling and saying, "Hey, I left a message yesterday, but nobody's called me back." So I check the messages that are on the board. How long they've been there. Do I need to poke any of the doctors to reach out to clients? What do the prescription refills look like? So it's really kind of trying to be the air traffic controller of the practice and get ahead of any potential problems and directly support the team. And the staff have really appreciated that. We do an annual employee workplace satisfaction survey, and that's probably the number one thing that came up on the survey this year was implementing manager on duty and having that layer of support. If a client is really, really upset, they have one person they can reach out to, and I'm available, I'm accessible, I'm on the headset. Um, Also, we started doing Monday Minutes, which is a newsletter that we send out to this team every Monday, announcing upcoming meetings, interviews, just trying to open up that line of communication. And then lastly, I send out a Monday kind of plan for myself for the week to my management team, so that they know where I'm going to be, what meetings I'm in, what I need from them. Really, just again, kind of an opportunity to get the day and the week started on a good foot and hopefully get ahead of any potential problems.
The name of the game is communication, and I think you all three spoke to that. So awesome. I really appreciate it. Well, thanks for flying with us on Flight Plan Quick Consults. If today's insights helped you climb to new heights, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your crew. Until next time, keep your mission clear, your team aligned, and your practice soaring.